all of the guests. Thank you all for coming. This is the Public Safety Beer Regulated Beverages Committee meeting. It is August 3rd, 2021, and we will start with attendance. Chair is present. Councilmember Johnston is here. Councilmember Nash is here. Porterfield, Pulley is here. Roberts is here. Rosenberg is here. Councilmember Swope is here. And that's all we have from the committee. But we do have, Councilmember Johnston is here. So we do have a quorum.
I will stand. Oh, thank you.
We do have a quorum, so we will get started. Before we get started with the agenda, we'll have a brief presentation from Commander Gilder. There he is. And let me say also, thinking about the recent shooting, police shooting, and want to offer our prayers and anything that we can do to help in that, and if you want to give us an update, anything on that as well. But we'll talk about, thank you. Thank you. We'll get a presentation on the encryption communication system from Commander Gilder.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So in 2019, the Metro Police Department started a discussion about encrypting our radios. A lot of major cities around the country have been doing that for a multitude of reasons. One, obviously we communicate sensitive personal identifying information over the radio, suspect information, victim information, could be dates of birth, social security numbers, things like that. Also, other sensitive information about the offenses go out over the air too. We may get information about a rape occurring at a particular address, suspects involved in that. A lot of that information is preliminary in nature, often changes, but that's put out over the air. And for years you had to have special equipment to hear this, but now with iPhones and other smartphones and apps, it's pretty ubiquitous, the ability to listen in on radio communications. In fact, when I was a field supervisor, and they're quick too, because when I was a field supervisor, I might be answering questions for the media, and I'd key up to ask, what time an incident went out. Within 10 seconds, I'd hear my voice on this person's iPhone. So it's real time. For us, one of the major incidents that kind of prompted this was the search for the Waffle House shooter. We were having spottings of him when that manhunt was underway, and we would have people, including the media, showing up to locations before officers were getting there. So that was really kind of what prompted us to take a look at encrypting our radios, and we began that discussion in early 2019. We didn't actually go live with encryption until November of 2019, but we had already been talking about it, discussions with answering questions from the media. I believe the Tennessean even ran an article in February of that year, some 9 months before we ever went live. We created an app, a place on our website so that the media and in fact the public at large can go and look at major incidents, shootings, stabbings, robberies, burglaries, several other categories of offenses, and get real-time information. It's refreshed every 10 minutes, so it's all pending stuff. So if the media's wanting to go, a shooting went out, they get the address, they get the basics, and they can go to the scene. And quite frankly, they weren't really relying on that information to put out reporting-wise, because again, as a field supervisor, they would hear stuff on the radio, but they would want to confirm or, get the actual information from somebody in the police department, because, like I said, a lot of times that stuff is very preliminary and often changes. So we do have a mechanism for them to check that and see what's going on currently countywide. Additionally, there's one for traffic crashes too, both injury and non-injury accidents, that they can check and see where those are occurring. And then our policy hasn't changed in the 20 years that I've been here. We have a policy that members of the department are allowed to speak to the media and answer questions. Again, keep being mindful of stuff that might compromise a criminal investigation, but otherwise we've always had a pretty open policy about our officers and supervisors being able to and expected to answer questions when they can from the media. So that's kind of how encryption unfolded on our side. Like I said, we've been live now. It'll be 2 years in November, and we feel it's a strong public safety issue, quite frankly, and also an issue of safety for the public, with, like I said, with their personal identifying information being relayed over the air.
Great, thank you for that explanation. So the portal that you mentioned that does provide the real-time information on incidents, is that available online?
It is. It's on our website.
MPD website, okay.
And it's also on the Open Data Portal site. And I should also mention that there's none of that stuff is secret. Our dispatch channels are all recorded. That information is subject to public records requests. So if somebody does want to find out, what occurred, again, provided it's releasable, it's not a pending criminal matter or something like that, then that is subject to being released. So there's still that transparency piece. It's just it's not real time, where we have the ability to redact social security numbers, things like that may be relayed over the air.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Are
ma'am.
there any questions? Committee?
Yes, please. So, first of all, I had the opportunity to talk to Chief Swan about the encryption on the fire side, because that's kind of the newer part of the conversation. And he made really compelling arguments about encryption. And I know a lot of committee members today saw an email that came from a retired arson investigator who expressed a lot of concerns about going full encryption with fire, which is a little bit of a different situation than MMPD, I think. And, both from the, perspective of open government and just the rarity of a fire department going encrypted. I think he said 11 out of 600 in Tennessee are encrypted. When it comes to fire department, we'd be the second of the top 50 cities in the country to do that. So I guess, I'm kind of left looking for a little bit of a middle ground between communications being completely wide open and government having the opportunity to be a gatekeeper of information getting out to the public. And so I'm curious about what options there are somewhere in between. I know there's been talk about making the encrypted channels available to credentialed media and that sort of thing. I don't know if that's something you all
On the
are
fire
looking
end,
at.
on the fire end?
Have you all had conversations like that on
We
your
have,
end?
and I
or
don't
is
have
that-
any issue if a media organization wants to pay for the equipment that the radio. We can have I would approve the radio shop to
Gotcha.
flash the radio to receive the dispatch channels. Sure.
Okay, so there is sort of a middle ground there, and that's all I've been kind of hoping for out of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember
When we talk about fire, typically when we say fire, it's fire/EMS. Are we talking about those channels as well? Fire, EMS, is it one and the same? So EMS has the potential to have some pretty seriously private matters as far as address, medical condition, any type of thing that absolutely would be a violation of my privacy if I was to have something in my. So I just want to make sure that when we say encrypted, we're not saying deleted. We're saying you can't have access to this real time, so that when you do a public records request, correct? You can get those recordings, but that very personal information would be redacted to protect that person's privacy. So when we're talking about privacy, it's actually more private than it would be if it was publicly available real time, correct?
Yeah, there are certain things that we may relay over the air that in a public records request are made specifically confidential by state law, and we would be required by law to redact them.
And by HIPAA compliance as well.
I would
There
imagine.
are different channels, right?
They are different channels.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm Steve Martini, I'm the Director of the Department of Emergency Communications. I feel like I can speak to the
Thank
fire
you
and
for
EMS
being
part of
here.
this. Fire and EMS, they're dispatched on 4 channels, and the fire calls and the medical calls are dispatched on the same talk groups together. So we don't have special medical talk groups that would be different from fire. Whatever they're doing for all of their personnel would be across the board. So with fire, it appears it would be all fire-related incidents, which would include medical, or none. We don't have a way to split that. It says medical calls be dispatched on this one and fire the other.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I think that middle ground of allowing credentialed media access really, which is apparently already allowed, I think that just folks need to be made aware that it's an option.
Any other questions? Yes.
Madam Chair, thank you for the recognition. I know I'm not on the committee. I think, following on Councilmember Rosenberg, I've heard 2 concerns about about this, and I think it's all resulted from the recent encroachment on the fire side. One is just general media access, which it sounds like might not be an issue. The other is specifically, again, in looking at scenarios that prompt this, most recently was the fireworks display on the 4th of July, where we had some officers effectively stuck in a position while the display was occurring. At the end of the day, fortunately, there was no serious incident related to that other than the scenario itself, but there might have been a scenario, had that been fully encrypted on all parties, that even we as Metro Council members might not have been made aware of that, had an officer or somebody who was involved in that closed loop been a part of effectively leaking that or transmitting that information out. So I do think there is a little bit of a transparency concern. I think that's mitigated somewhat if we do have some system for credential media access, but I think that's an important consideration as well.
Yes. Councilman Public.
And I think we've all heard there's also a public safety concern here with this as well. In my personal experience, which dates back to the late 1970s with the fire side and the 1980s and beyond with the police side, we all, in my day, which if you had a fully available radio to people, there are plenty of people who listen for these calls, and they will beat the police or beat the fire to the scene because they happen to be positioned in a place where it makes them a little bit closer to the fire engine. We had people that would show up at the scene, take pictures, get in the way, and create somewhat of a public safety hazard. And if you got people showing up where you're looking for something like a Waffle House shooter or something like that, and you have the public showing up there before the police does, that creates a very, very serious public safety concern that I think is addressed by this. So I think that's something that has to be balanced with this issue about transparency.
I just wanted to get some clarification on Councilman O'Connell's concern about, in the situation that you gave an example of, specifically where the officers were sort of stuck in that building, and you mentioned where council members couldn't have heard about, I don't know any of us that would have run to their rescue, but is there, I don't understand the concern, but then also, to the point of encryption, are there any first responders that are encrypted out of this information to where it would prevent you, a police officer, from coming to the aid of a fire department personnel? Was that your concern?
No,
Okay.
my concern is the accountability side of things. We now know, after fire ran through an investigation, we were able to chronicle what actually happened. There was a key missing step that is now a new checkbox on the checklist of things that you'll do, right? That a private security firm member is not the person who gets to do an all clear without it going to the chain of command to make sure that it's actually all clear, right? There was a missing step there. We now know going forward that such scenarios could be more easily prevented, and we might not have even had access to that entire episode to provide that level of accountability had nobody known that it happened, right? I mean, yes, obviously it happened. There was miscommunication, in some way between NFB and MPD here, and now we've had an improved process, but that's only happened because there was review that people knew about.
To a certain extent, I would like to say that our fire department and our police department and our EMS department want to be as efficient and effective as possible, and that they would have looked internally into that failure of communication in and of themselves. But maybe they wouldn't have. The public knew about it, and maybe that applied some pressure. I would just like to say that I think that would have happened regardless. But to your point, agreed. I don't think encryption would have hindered that in any way, in that they could go back and look. It was open to public record, and they could have seen that failure there and fixed it.
The reason everybody in this room knew about it was because of an encrypted channel.
And for clarification, the communication, what do you call it? The speaker, whatever you get hear what's happening as far as incidents with police, fire, and EMS. That's still happening. It's just not. Is there a delay in the real-time communication?
Is there a delay between us?
Yes, between what you're hearing on the speaker and what's being uploaded to the website.
No, well, what's been uploaded to the website is data about time, date, location.
Okay, but the conversation between.
The conversation is not
okay, is
included,
what's not
correct,
included.
but that gives them the opportunity to contact us, go to a scene,
Right.
collect information, and just generally to members of the public want to follow up on it, then make public records requests for that if they want to.
For more information, but as far as the transparency in the incident happening, that real-time data is available.
It refreshes every 10 minutes automatically.
So the incident would have still been known, it just wouldn't have been open to the chatter between the officers and others.
Right, although I think honestly, the bigger takeaway here is that we have a pathway for credentialed media to.
Yeah, right.
And that's
So
fine.
that would solve that issue.
Okay, yes, sir.
I think I may chime in. I didn't plan to, only because I think I'm the only credentialed media in the room. Nashville native, work at Channel 2, been there for over 30 years. I think if you ask any of these officers, they will tell you that they've encountered me in multiple times. I would hope they would tell you that I was more of a help than a hindrance during those times. And it is a concern for the media, for the encryption, and I'll tell you how we came to an agreement on this in 1999 when they went to a trunking system, which was different then. It was 800 megahertz, so it was like a cell phone frequency, but it bounced from tower to tower. There wasn't technology to monitor it. And we have a signed agreement with Metropolitan government that we purchased the radios, I think like Commander Gilder's talking about now. And we took them to the radio shop. They programmed them with the frequencies that they wanted us to have. And I actually had a chance to talk to Chief Swan 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, about this. And because with the radios they have now, they pretty much have unlimited channels. So what we were asking for was just the main dispatch channels, the precinct channels, none of their private SWAT channels, detectives, you know, any of their major incident channels, like this morning with the incident on Antioch Pike. And we asked for the same thing with the fire department. And dispatchers, you can help me out if I get this wrong, but B1 and B2 are their main dispatch and responding channels. B6 and B8 are usually their working fire and rec channels. If I'm wrong, you can correct me.
No, you're accurate.
And very seldom, I don't know if I can remember that they put out people's social security numbers. Addresses come across on regular dispatch channels, that's just it, because they're telling everybody where to go. I think you go to B4, B5, or B3 for refusals, and I think that's where some private information comes across. So we have tried to negotiate with the fire department, and actually Chief Swan said that if we could put together a written proposal, that he would take it to Chief Drake, but it sounds like that it may be in place already. If I'm understanding Commander Gilder right, that if we buy the equipment, they'll program what channels we want. So I'd be more than able to answer any questions media side if anybody has any, but that's just where we're at this point. But I like what Commander Gilder said, if it's possible for us to do now.
Thank you for being here. All right, if there are no more discussion on that, we will move into our agenda. The first item on the agenda, and we don't have a consent because there was only one consent item. So we will start with RS 2021-1062 by Councilman Parker. There's a letter to approve exempt overlord located at 2503 Gallatin Avenue, Suite 104, from the minimum distance requirements for obtaining a beer permit.
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any against? Any abstentions? All right, resolutions. RS 2021-1063, Toombs, Gamble, Bradford, Sorora approves an application for a substance use disorder grant from the U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance to the Metro Davidson County Sheriff's Office to serve men with histories of SUD who are housed in DCSO facilities during their period of incarceration and upon re-entry into the
So
community.
moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. Discussion. Councilmember Toombs is not here. Commander Gilder, or anyone, is there anyone here from Bureau of Justice Department?
Sheriff's Department.
Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, Sheriff's Department. I think it's pretty clear.
Yeah. Are there any questions about this particular grant?
Do we know what SUD stands for?
Substance
Substance
use
use
disorder.
Substance use disorder. I believe this is a recurring grant every year, and we just have to reapprove every year.
Okay.
A lot of trauma in this, right?
I think this is
It
coming
was
across
defined
the-
earlier.
Okay, so are there any questions about this? that we may need to find out about, or are we ready to take a vote?
Ready to take a vote?
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. And moving on to RS 2021-1066 appropriates a total of $85,000 from a certain account of the general fund of the General Service District to various nonprofit organizations selected to receive public safety violence reduction pilot grant funds. And there is a substitute to this bill that changes the amount that is being requested to, I have that substitute in front of me. 105, I believe. Yes, 105 and 21 organizations. It was 85 and 18 organizations. And it's been substituted to 105 and 21 organizations. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And
Thank
move
you.
substitute?
Thank you. All right. Any discussion on the substitute or the bill? This came out of the Community Safety Partnership, or no, I should say, yes, out of the Community Safety Partnership Fund, $2 million that was designated for partnerships with community organizations to reduce violence. This is the first round of grants. They are $5,000 grants, small grants to 21 organizations that provide mentoring, athletic activities, things to keep youth particularly into structured activities to help reduce violence, keep them in organized activities to keep them from having violence issues on the street. And so this is the first round of grants that the Community Partnership, Safety Partnership Committee is recommending to the council. Yes.
We do have that list of nonprofits and the corresponding amounts that, is it in
It's in the bill.
Okay,
Yes, it
okay.
is in the bill.
Perfect.
Yes.
I'm familiar with a number of people on the list, and many of you do great work. But are we expecting any measures back in
Yes.
regard to how many people served?
Yes, definitely. Each
Some degree of
organization,
success,
And that
or
is-
lack thereof?
yes, that is also included in the legislation. Each organization would have to sign a contract for the grant fundings, and one of the requirements is to provide an end-of-the-year report on all of those things. What are the outcomes of their grant activity? Any other questions? All right, with that, we will take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right, thank you. Late items. The late item resolution. A resolution accepting by Toombs, a resolution accepting the terms of a cooperative purchasing master agreement for law enforcement Airbus helicopters. May I have a
So
motion?
moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. Open for discussion. And do you have any, I have some information, but if you.
Sure, I actually brought the experts with me. I've
awesome.
got Captain Walburn and Lieutenant Durbin and Sergeant Knapp here from the aviation. Well, Captain Walburn oversees their Special Operations Division, which includes aviation, so I'm going to let them speak to that.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here. Whoever wants to chime in and tell us about this particular Airbus program.
Yep, this is a new helicopter to replace our 1970s era helicopters that we have currently. Modern helicopters increase our capability throughout the city, allow us to do additional rescue efforts. Our urban search and rescue, which is also part of the Special Operations Division. We've got them trained up and they've gone out to Beaman Park on multiple occasions to assist lost hikers. They've also gone out of state to assist with natural disasters. This helicopter program would enhance their abilities to search for people. The technology on the aircraft will help them. It also increases our SWAT team's ability to conduct rescues off of rooftops or deploy themselves onto rooftops to more safely enter a tactical situation if that ever became necessary. It just really advances our aviation program in the city. It just moves us from 1970 up to 2021.
And is this just one?
This is two aircraft.
Two aircraft?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, two questions. One, can you help us understand the need for late filing on this resolution? And secondly, can you explain to us if this makes us even more cost efficient using the modern helicopters?
Yep. The late filing is because of allocation that Airbus has. They contacted us last week to let us know that, like so many things right now in the economy, there's a shortage, and there's about 3 or 4 law enforcement agencies that are lined up with funding ready to purchase these aircraft if we don't have the agreement in place, is what they said. So we spoke with purchasing, and Michelle Lane has been tremendous to work with to try and get this pushed through so that we can keep our allocation. That's what the reason for the late filing is, to try and keep our allocation from Airbus. And if we lose the allocation, we're looking at about a 12 to 18 month delay, I think is what they told us. So that's the reason for the late filing.
So with respect to the late filing, if we miss that window, would it effectively end up costing us a lot more money down the road to?
Yeah, I think the price will go up. The price has gone up since we've started this purchasing process already. And I would, it's just me speculating, but I would speculate that the prices will continue to go up.
So part of this is a trade-in. The 2 existing helicopters that we have, we're trading in, and much like a used car, the more you drive it, the more it depreciates. And so we would depreciate the value of that trade-in as well.
And we are using the GSA purchasing program, which kind of leverages the federal government's purchasing power to make sure that we have the lowest price on these aircraft.
These are French, right?
It's
Airbus is a French company.
made in the United States.
So Airbus should be a capital A. I'm just,
Councilmember Johnson.
details,
Thank you.
details.
I had the
Devil is in detail.
Why are you buying a Boeing helicopter?
I had the honor and privilege of actually riding one of these helicopters when my district was flooded, and I was invited, thankfully, to be able to go up. My first helicopter ride, a little bit nervous, but it's amazing to see it in action, where the bird's eye view that you really do have, and especially when you're talking about avoiding high-speed chases, because at that point you don't have to. You can watch them. You're rarely gonna outrun a helicopter. But it was also interesting to see the pilot, where this older aircraft, older than me, is lacking in GPS. So she's got her GPS where she's trying to figure out sort of where she's going. She's looking at the GPS. She's handling hand and foot, enabling this aircraft to continue to stay in the air. And then she's also spotting with her eyeballs down on the ground. So it's a multifaceted operation that she's doing. And that was multifaceted just with me, just going around and looking at the flood damage, not looking for a particular suspect or whatever it may be. So I am in full support of this. That probably doesn't come as a huge surprise, but I'm excited about what she was saying. These new helicopters, the capability of them is like a Rolls Royce, and it's going to make our department safer, the people that are in that aircraft, but also be able to help us, to make us safer in their extended capabilities. So I hope that everyone is in support of this.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Just for
And I will
clarification,
sign-
it's more like a Peugeot. No.
It was really fun too, by the way.
So that we can move it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. And on to bills on second reading. BL 2021-830, Hurt Toombs, Rutherford, Gamble, Hancock, amends Title III of the Metro Code to delete obsolete provisions and add certain Department of Emergency Communications employees to the fire and police service pension
So
plan.
moved.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion?
Did I hear a second?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Councilmember Hurt, thank you for
third.
joining us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly appreciate this. The indication of this fill the room should let you know how important this legislation is. I feel very honored and privileged to be able to serve as the sponsor of this. It's been a 7-year process for me, gone through study and formulating committee and the benefits board, and stating the case for this legislation. Could not have done it without the extreme brilliance of Director Steve Martini, who's over DEC, the dispatchers who are here, and our benefit board members, Director Shannon Hall, and our fireman Chief Stacy, Captain Stacy Rucker. Well, I mean, just receive it. And so, and I know that Captain Rucker this morning actually received a proclamation for his long-term service to the Benefit Board, and I think it dues of respect for him to congratulate. I do know that we have several dispatchers and people in the job that would really like to, and I would really like for you to hear what it is that they have to say. And I know that this is public service. So I think that it would be most appropriate for Director Martini to speak to that public service, but Director Hall and Captain Rucker have some amazing words to say as well. So
If we can have one representative, because we are running behind and we have another, is this the last one? Oh, this, no, we have one more bill. So if we can have
If
one
there's
or
only
two,
one, I don't think I'm motion for it.
well, we'll say two, one or two.
Okay.
Please, you sure? Go please, you're the director.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the group today. It's been a pleasure to work with all of these folks. Your kind words are very kind. But this is a group effort, certainly a team effort. Really the focus here is the long-term impact of this job on these folks in year after year, day after day. When they take these calls, it's 80 to 100 calls in a shift that they're handling. One example last month was a child in a car that was carjacked, and we were walking through that process of getting that car back with that child in it. The car was recovered, the child was recovered, and you never saw it on the news because it ended well. And that dispatcher hung up that phone and took the next call and took the next call. They didn't walk away and go home and go, what a moment I had. They did that 80 times a day. And when we talk about the cumulative stress impact of that situation over 20 or 30 years, it's just unattainable and unrealistic to think they're going to work to retirement. And I heard this morning that says dispatchers don't stay till retirement. It says because you got to be 95, right? This is why. So this opportunity is a long time coming and a great benefit to our folks and a well-deserved benefit. And I appreciate this group considering it.
Thank you for that, and thank you all for your service. It's an understatement, as you said. This is the least we can do to show our support for the work that you all do in servicing our communities and just saving lives. So thank you all. Did you want to add a little?
Just one comment that really struck me that really gave my full support. Let me just say, Study and Formulating Committee, complete support. Employee Benefit Board, complete support. There's no opposition to this anywhere through the process, and it's a full vetting. Special called meetings to study this specifically. But just remember that these are the people that are answering the calls cold, and all they've got is information they're receiving. They don't have the benefit of their eyes of seeing what's going on. They don't have the benefit of their hands to see what's going on. They're trying to assess the situation, not only to help the person on the other end, possibly help other people on the other end, right, that are assisting that person. Then also coordinating an appropriate dispatch from EMS, fire, police, and then trying to gather as much information not only to help that person, but to help our first responders be successful when they come into that situation. So I really do feel like having the very best components and really treating this the way it should is only for the benefit not only for our residents and our citizens, but honestly our public safety folks that are responding in the field. They're setting them up for success, and that is what saves lives. So Sharon Hurt had said very eloquently, this really is the trifecta. Really, you need all this whole spectrum. They're the first responders, these are the second, and then the people that are holding folks behind the wall are the third. So this really does complete kind of what we think public safety pension looks like.
Excellent work, Councilmember Hurt. Councilmember Nash.
I'll be a witness to both those statements. As a guy, you have to be able to chew gum and walk and juggle all at the same time. I often didn't know how you did it. And we as police officers, so many expect so much information from you when all you're getting is what you get on the telephone, and so bless you. And SEIU deserves a lot of credit for helping negotiate this process too.
100%.
Thank you. All right.
I don't have any objection to this. I just wish that our OEM field responders would have been included in it because they are there for every single one of our major disasters, just like all of our first responders that are in this room. And for whatever reason, they were left out. I wish that had not been the case, but we will forge ahead.
All right. Thank you.
And with this last statement, Director Hall said earlier that the dispatchers have empowered Director Martini. and he empowered me. So it starts and it ends with them. Without them doing what they do, we could not do what we do. And for that, we are grateful and thankful to you for all that you have done and continue to do. So with that, I do ask.
With that, I think we're ready for a vote. All those in favor?
Just real quick, I want to thank Director Martini because we have been fighting this for years. And by him sitting in the seat that we do, we had the support finally. So I have to thank him for that support and being appointed to our center. So
Thank you.
30 years?
36 years.
Wow.
36
Thank you. What's your name?
Elisa Franklin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and thank you for your comment. All right, all those in favor?
Yep.
All right, any opposed? That goes without saying, 9-0. Thank you. And last but not least, DL 2021-834, Taylor Gamble, Sarar, and others. Davidson County by and through the Metro Nashville Police Department for the purpose of ensuring the provisions, integration, and coordination of behavioral health services for individuals who are mutually served by both organizations. Motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. Discussion.
So there's some words missing on this. It's a partnership with the Mental Health Co-op in Davidson County, just to clarify for everyone.
And so this is in support of the program that just recently started.
That is correct.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
You got off easy, Taylor.
Our adjourned.
Easy. Questions, nothing.
What's that?
You said, I felt like I grabbed a shoot. Brick wall.
Thank you.
You got some glass.
I'm good. Thank you for coming. That was very helpful.
Hey.
We see you all the time.
So excited.
Good job. Good job.
Well, I don't know.
That's okay. That's okay.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Philadelphia neighbor.
I know. Because everybody wasn't capitalizing. I'm going, I know these are French.
I know.
Commander, I was.
Thank you.
Somebody got me.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
So I'm happy just to let it vote on through. Hi, sir. How are you? Doing great.
Turn off